So, as you guys all know, this is a YouTube channel that is designed to discuss UFC and all things that have to do with professional fighting in one way or another. Basically just beating each other up, throwing punches, maybe a little WWE in there, kind of performative chair smashing, chair throwing. We accept all of these sorts of things. And yeah, that's why I made this YouTube channel, so that we would be able to talk about that sort of stuff. Specifically, I'm talking about Uruguay and Colombia. I'd be surprised if you hadn't seen at this point, but there was some absolute nonsense going on in the Uruguay and Colombia match. And we're going to dive into what happened and why all of it is stupid, but fortunately not indicative of any problems at the 2026 World Cup. Because something important to remember here is that this tournament is Copa America, which means it is administered by CONMEBOL. Right now, CONMEBOL is obviously collaborating with the U.S. Federation in order to use the stadiums and what have you, but CONMEBOL is the one that's putting this tournament together and kind of running the main logistics of it. They are bringing in the U.S. Federation for assistance on various things, but if you're thinking that the World Cup is going to be an exact copy of what we're seeing in Copa America, it's not, right? It's going to be administered and planned out and executed in a completely different way than Copa America, which is at times notoriously poorly planned out and executed, right? It is a tournament that is renowned for its chaotic administration as much as its chaotic results on the field. So the fact that this was able to happen in the first place is probably not as big of a surprise as it should be. But let me get this straight, though. As much as I make jokes as a defense mechanism, this was sad. This sucked. This whole situation, anytime that you end up with fans, particularly fans that are your families, not just families of the players, I'm talking about just families that attend the game in general, that end up in some sort of cross-section of drunk, dumb violence, that's a problem. I think something that is definitely an issue when it comes to fandom, particularly football or soccer fandom in general, is that there is a subset of the population that believes that it is manly and shows how much you care about a team if you get into fights and you start to try to beat somebody up. That is wrong. If you needed anybody else to tell you that, that's definitely wrong. You should probably find a new hobby. I hear woodworking's great. Maybe play some video games. Take a Xanax, right? Get a Tamagotchi. I don't fucking care, right? But like seriously, just trying to beat the shit, particularly, weirdly, you know what I don't have a problem with is the groups of hooligans that explicitly fight other groups of hooligans. Because you know what that is? That's one step away from just going to a fighting gym and just practicing your fighting. If you want to line up 30 dudes that are a big fan of one club and 30 dudes that are a big fan of another club and they all know what they're there for and they want to get in a fight, then do it. As long as you're not destroying public property, like go do it in the woods somewhere or whatever. I mean, like, I don't know why you would want to do that, but if you're not destroying public property, not endangering anybody else, and everybody there is like in agreement of what is supposed to be happening, then I kind of don't have a problem with that. I would recommend getting a hobby that endangers you a little bit less, but you're not actually doing anything bad. It's the idiots like some of the people that you're going to see in this video that decide to get in these rolling, drunken brawls with people that didn't sign up for it, right? Like they're getting in fights with people that have not signed up for that. They're destroying public property. And in this case, according to who you ask, endangering the actual families of the players, making this situation particularly nasty. I just wanted to be clear kind of off the top that the people that are actually instigating these types of fights are losers. They're losers that need to find something else that they want to do with their lives. I think it's just that simple. That being said, here's what happened. We played a match, Uruguay-Colombia, Copa America semifinal. Colombia ends up winning 1-0. It was a violent match. Let me sum it up for you with this. Watch as Davinson Sanchez literally punches Jose Maria Jimenez in the stomach in the middle of a corner kick. Boom, there's a punch. That's a liver shot or something. I don't know. I haven't played the UFC video games in a while. A Colombia player was also sent off in this game for throwing an elbow. The Colombia player also said that he had received a similar elbow. This was a predictably violent Copa America match on the field, right? It was full of violence and nonsense, cards all over the place. Colombia picking up a 1-0 win. James Rodriguez getting another assist. It was in a corner to Jefferson Lerma. And Colombia is headed to the final to play Argentina for the championship of the Western Hemisphere, which is going to be an awesome match, and I can't wait for it. But it was after the match that is all anyone is talking about, because there's these videos that have gone viral of Darwin Nunez, the very expensive striker for Liverpool, in a full-on brawl in the stands. I want to be clear about a couple of facts here. One, Darwin Nunez is far from the only player that was in the stands, though granted, he is definitely the player that seemed to be the most zealous about actually brawling with the other team. Here's him before even entering the stands, as far as I understand the order of events, lining up to throw a chair into the stands. Here you go. So Darwin Nunez is there. He throws a chair but has it blocked by a security guard. That is not something that is going to de-escalate a situation particularly effectively. But before we continue and looking at kind of the videos, you need to understand kind of where the mindset of these players are. This is Jose Maria Jimenez. He is not I don't believe he's the number one captain for Uruguay, but he is somebody that I've seen wear the captain's armband for Uruguay. The center back saying this is a disaster, our family is in danger. Now, in the AP News article, they don't go so far as to confirm that this was the Uruguay players' family section, but they do quote Jose Maria Jimenez. He said, "We had to get into the stands to take out our loved ones with small babies and newborns. Everything was a disaster. There was not a single police officer." Okay, so in my studious review of this footage, there are a few police officers, but I'm mind blown at how few there actually were. I see 2 or 3 attempting to, when we look at these clips, attempting to kind of get in the way of the Colombia fans and the Uruguay fans. But look, I just went to a match between the Netherlands and Turkey in Berlin. I went to that quarterfinal. There were so many police officers there that if the entire stadium had turned into a riot, they would have been able to put that thing down in about 5 minutes, let alone what is, relative to what I was just describing, a very small brawl. You just need more police officers at these sorts of events, right? Because as much as I would love for this to be a perfect world where there aren't drunk losers that decide that getting in a fight is the best way for them to try and express their fandom, right? Those people exist, right? And you need to anticipate the fact that they exist, particularly when we're talking about the intensity of a semifinal, particularly when we're talking about Copa America, which I would wager is a more contentious event than the Euros. But Germany had, hundreds of cops in riot gear with shields and helmets that were standing in circles, ready to be deployed to any sort of thing that looked like this. They actually threw a guy out of the stands that was near us. He didn't even get in a brawl. He must have just said something or maybe thrown a drink. I have no idea. I'm just speculating. But 5 dudes in riot gear came and just carried the guy right out of the stadium. It was over like that. Right, and CONMEBOL and the stadium administration and whoever is in charge of this completely dropped the ball here because this went on for a while. There are a lot of videos of this. This is the first video where you can see, I don't sprechen Sie Spanish, right, but you can see Uruguayan players are telling Colombian fans with family no, and then things kind of spiral out of control from there. What you notice over the course of these videos is it seems like the majority of the people that are actually in the stands are attempting to de-escalate, and right when it seems like things are settling down, there's always one idiot that just throws an over-the-top haymaker that just re-incites everything. You can see on the near side here, that looks like a member of either the Uruguayan Federation or the Uruguayan coaching staff using some choice words, yelling at the Colombian fans. So, this was involvement at all levels. You see various players that are involved in this, and this is before we even get to Darwin Nunez kind of being in the stands. Here's another angle that Barstool Sports kind of tweeted out. It settles down, and every single time it settles down, here are the police right here. There's just one guy that just throws a punch and it keeps going. There's Darwin Nunez, and that's when Darwin Nunez gets in there. Darwin Nunez, it is safe to say he was not a de-escalator in this situation. Look at the way the intensity changes once Darwin Nunez gets in there. I mean, Darwin got in there and he was ready to go 10 rounds. In this video, you see Darwin Nunez like actually punch a Colombian. And this whole situation is awful. I've talked about the fact that the Federation, CONMEBOL, and the Stadium Authority needs to do a much better job of being prepared for these sorts of situations, particularly once the match ends. You need to have policemen in view to just make sure that they're able to de-escalate this sort of situation. You've got fans. I talked about you got a couple of drunk assholes who are just straight up losers, dweebs with nothing better to do than think that getting in a brawl with is cool. But there is another problem with this situation, right? Because I've got no problem with you trying to go in and get your family out, right? I have no problem. If your family is in danger, you do anything to protect your family, right? But I think what's clear, the more like you look at this situation and the different Uruguayan players are talking about, like there was an avalanche of Colombian fans after the game. So it seems we'll never really know exactly what set this off, but that the Colombian fans were at least talking mad shit and just kind of descended upon the Uruguayan family, like players' families in the stands, and this sort of pushing and shoving and drink throwing and brawling started up in that way. But it is also clear to me that over the course of this, particular players, and it really does look like Darwin Nunez did not de-escalate this situation in a way that you probably would hope. I don't think Darwin's a bad guy, right? I don't think Darwin's a bad guy. I think in most senses he was doing exactly what you're supposed to do in this situation. You feel like your family's in danger, right? But I don't think this situation was entirely out of control. It's not like there was a mosh pit where a ton of people were just being beat up at the point where Darwin Nunez seems to show up on the scene here. And look, Darwin Nunez, the bottom line, becomes a part of this fracas, of this fight. And he's not the only one, right? We saw the other members of the Uruguayan Federation or the Uruguayan coaching staff that are getting involved in this situation, all with just Colombian fans, right? And players going into the stands in general. I don't have a problem with it because their family was in danger. But the only thing that I could say look, do I have a problem with any of this? I have a problem with all of it. None of this should have ever happened. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. People got to learn how to act right? Because they're just acting out right now. But all I'm setting up is they're probably going to fine or maybe even suspend Darwin Nunez for this, and I don't have a problem with that either. Because I think there's a lot of Uruguayan players that went into the stands that did not escalate this situation in the way that Darwin Nunez did escalate this situation. Now, I don't know the specifics of the situation. Maybe Darwin's kid got hit in the head with a bottle or something, and she was. I know that there were certain members of this Uruguayan family delegation that did require medical attention, whether it be for a cut or I don't know what else. Right? There are videos out there of them being tended to. Nobody looked like they were in dire straits or anything. That would obviously completely change the complexion of this, but just the sorts of scrapes and bruises that you get from being around this sort of pushing and shoving and cup throwing sort of nonsense. So maybe Darwin's family was particularly harmed by this, and that's why he was so incensed in the first place, in which case I understand it more. But there were a lot of players in the stands, and not all of them kind of elevated it to the malice in the palace sort of stuff that Darwin Nunez was doing. This whole situation is terrible. I don't think anybody should be yeeted into the sun for it. I think what this should be is a very clear lesson about how poor the setup was from CONMEBOL in order to handle this sort of thing. And they should use the video from this to literally remove everybody that you can see throwing a punch or shoving from the stands and not allow them back to any Copa America match ever, right? Because the biggest thing, and I keep coming back to it, is there were so many opportunities to de-escalate this. Right? This wasn't a nonstop punching and shoving bonanza. There are moments in all of these videos where nobody's doing anything, and then one asshole starts it back up again. Right? And this could have just ended. And you just need to take all those assholes and tell them they can't go to matches anymore. Because if you can't handle yourself in public, then you just shouldn't be allowed to be in these sorts of public spaces. It's just really that simple. Shame on all of these Colombian fans for taking out their excitement on these Uruguayan fans. I would assume they didn't know that it was the Uruguayan players' families. Like I would assume that maybe the Uruguayan players' families decided to inform them. There's obviously the one video of the guy saying, "Hey, it's our family," but it's kind of hard to hear and internalize that sort of information when there's all this nonsense going on. But shame on all these Colombian fans. This is absolutely ridiculous, stupid, embarrassing situation. And it's the reason that Copa America is looked at as kind of like it's looked at as this more, like honestly, more dangerous. It's looked at as is a more dangerous equivalent of the Euros. Like I would take my mom to a Euros match, and I did. She went to the match between the Netherlands and Turkey, was fine and had a great time. I don't know if I'd take her to a Copa America match. I certainly wouldn't feel safe doing it, and that's sad. That's really sad, and they should do whatever they need to do in order to make it possible for you to go to one of these matches, or for you, if you're a player, to bring your family to one of these matches, kids and all, and not worry about them actually getting hit with a beer or a punch or a kick or a shove. Right? That's just stupid, and it's sad. And I am very interested to see how Copa America handles doling out the punishment for this sort of thing. I will be upset if the punishment's too high for any of the members of the Uruguayan Federation, because defending your family's defending your family. As long as like it's confirmed. I mean, the AP is basically just reporting what Jose Jimenez is saying, and I don't know why Jose Jimenez would be lying about it being their family, but as long as it's confirmed that this was the family section, you can't be too harsh with the punishment to any of the Uruguayan players. Make sure that you just ban all the fans that got involved in this, and we can move on with our lives, hopefully. But just a tough situation.